Hey, what is up, everybody? My name is Taetro. Welcome back to another ADSR stream. If you joined me last week, you know we worked on creating a beat, like the process of doing that, some music theory stuff, and overall, like orchestration, I guess you could say. And today we're going to focus on arranging a beat. So if you actually even want to follow along at home and you've got an Ableton project that is just a bunch of loops and you've just got session view and you want to figure out how to take those beats and actually finish them, arrange them, mix them, that's what we're going to be working on today, and you can follow along at home. I see a few folks popping up in the chat. I'm monitoring all the chats, I believe. I've got YouTube on one screen. I've got the restream chat, which will give me like Facebook and everywhere else, but it's cool to see some folks. Camilo, yeah, it looks like you were here last week, so this week we will be continuing on and we'll be using the same exact beat from last week to do it. What is up, Malitha? Good to see you. Breath of the Muse, what is up? JL says, name your favorite artists. Go. That would be good to hear. So if you got a favorite artist, drop it in the chat and we'll see what everybody's liking these days, what everybody's taste is at. Prince, good to see you. Robert, hello. Welcome, folks. And as usual, if y'all have any questions as we go, either related to what we're doing or semi-related to what we're doing, let me know and I'll do my best to stop and take some chat breaks and answer them. But guys, check out this new setup. I told you last week I'd be upgrading the streaming setup, and it happened. So we've got a couple different cameras now. I've got this one. Y'all actually might be able to see the chat when I do this, so you can see my hands. Of course, we can see the screen, Ableton. That's what we're going to be doing our work. But you might want to see me there as well, and now I'm in the corner. So this is how we're going to be spending most of our time today. But yeah, I'm stoked. This is a lot more stable setup and we'll be able to do a lot more live streaming. If you don't know, I have my own channel, youtube.com/Taetro. And if you like what you hear today in this hour, then you should go follow me over there too. But I don't want to talk for too long before we actually get into what we're doing today. So before we get into like arranging and mixing, let's actually review what we did last week. So here we go. Oh, we got some more people joining. What is up, DJL7 Steve? Nascent, what is up? Bailey, hello, what is up? George, what is going on? Welcome to all the people just jumping in. Yeah, stoked to see y'all coming back. Let's give a listen to the beat that we made last week. Yeah, let's launch some clips. That's the melody we started with, I believe. Then we added some pad chords. Let's bring in the drums now. Bring in the bass. Too early again. There we go. Stuff. So this is the beat we made last week, and we should review actually what's going on in this beat, because it's very simple, as you can see. Like, how many parts do we have? That was the main part of last week, is we were dividing things up into parts, and I kind of labeled them by the end last week, but let's review that real quick. So usually when I'm making my beats, they all kind of fall into these categories of parts, and this is kind of how you can get a nice full sounding piece of music. Like, it doesn't just come from the mix, it also comes from the musical ideas and the orchestration. This really is orchestration, because when you think about old-time orchestration, you've got your flutes and piccolos at the top, and then you've got your really deep double basses and cellos at the bottom. Well, the same thing applies in beat making. You've got like a nice deep bass here, and then you've got high bells on top. It's all the same. So let's dig in a little bit and see what these parts actually are. So we have a melody. That's pretty self-explanatory. This is the main thing the listener is listening to. Usually we think of melody, in most popular music and stuff, the melody is carried by the vocal or the singer. And then there are some chords. The chords are really the bed that this whole thing lies on. you notice that it's 3 notes at a time, right? That's what makes a chord, at least 3 notes, a triad, which gives us some harmony, because previously with the melody, that's just a single line, single notes at a time. Add in some chords, we finally have some harmony. To better support those chords and just really listen to where those chords are sitting in the spectrum of frequency, right? They're sort of in the middle, but we want to anchor that down with some bass. So let's start those together and unsolo that. I'm going to stop the melody for now. Let's hear just the bass and the chords together. So that's a very, very simple bass line, but it is anchoring in that low end under the pads, and it's really following the chords. So we have our root note in the chord here is a C sharp, another C sharp, that's the same chord again. Then we have F sharp and F sharp. That's really like 2 chords. So we played a C sharp and then an octave above to add some movement, an F sharp, and then we brought it down to an E. So it's actually adding another layer of harmony to this when we add a second bass note that doesn't quite match the chords, but our ear is still listening to that bass line for what direction is the harmony actually going. Not only that, but it walks us back down to the C. Let me actually see if I can demonstrate. Yeah, let's take a look at that actually. If we go here, play a C sharp, right? Hopefully y'all can see that pretty well. Play a C sharp, then we go up to that F sharp. Then we want to get back to the C sharp, right? So we want to walk it down. You notice that E is right in the middle. Very easy motion. You don't see any very big leaps other than that octave. It feels very natural, and that's the E there is really a passing tone. We're passing through it to get to C sharp. All right, moving on. So that's our bass. That's kind of like holding down our harmony. The drums, like y'all are used to hearing drums like this, right? Like this is like a very basic hip hop trap kind of style beat where the snare is really emphasizing beats 3. Here you can see it here. Beat 3, beat 3, beat 3. Bar 4 becomes a little bit like a fill, so it gets a little different. And then our kick drum is really emphasizing the downbeat. You see it there on 1. And then we have the absence of a downbeat here, which actually creates a certain feel, but then the downbeat is back on beat on bar 3 of that loop. Boom, boom. 2, 3, 4. 1, 2, 3, 4. Yeah, see? That kind of creates some movement when you don't follow the actual pattern the whole time. So we made those drums. We played that in last week, but we took the liberty of adding a hi-hat loop to add to it. And you hear that motion in the pitch. That is because we automated the transposition, which actually adds a layer of originality, especially when you're using loops. You want to add some flavor of your own. The last part to talk about is the high stuff, and I'm going to jump into chat and answer some questions for sure, but we'll talk about this last part first. So I grouped this and I just said high stuff, right? Because everything so far, let's actually unsolo, and let's play everything so far. Everything has been in the kind of middle to low. Even this melody is not a very high melody. The chords are sitting somewhere in the middle, the bass is rock bottom, and the drums are the drums. So there's something missing on top, or at least that's space for us to put stuff, right? So we added this layer of, high stuff. Now that I'm listening to it, it seems a little bit loud, but you can see that there was definitely an opening to add this stuff in there, and that's high bells. And if we look closely, we see that these bells are actually playing the exact same thing as the melody. That's two different clips I'm clicking on here. But you can see that they're actually labeled the same because I just copy and pasted the loop and brought these bells up an octave. These pads are a copy of these pads here. So I was able to fill that void of the higher content by literally just copying musical ideas and putting them up a couple octaves. So when you put it all together, everything fills in nicely. And you can you gotta think from a listener's perspective. You want to be able to listen through and pick out all these different parts, right? And if they're all sitting in their own place, like you have your high stuff on top, I can very clearly hear the high stuff. I can absolutely hear the bass and the drums. But that melody still comes through because it's somewhere in the middle. It's not too low, it's not too high. How you feeling, chat? My mom says good morning. Good morning, Mom. Cool. Let's go back here. I realized that I didn't switch the camera back. Sorry, folks. So, what does it say? What do you say? We can actually go back to the big camera. Even though that bass looks grouped, what's in there? Let's take a look. It's not grouped. It's actually a preset. And we did build this beat using all, for the most part, besides this hi-hat loop, all presets from Live, I believe. And you can actually get Live free for 90 days. If you guys don't know that yet, go to Ableton's website. They extended their free trial for 90 days. So if you're feeling cooped up during this quarantine and you want to take a stab at learning Live, or if you want to follow along with this stuff, that's the way to go. Yeah, this bass is an Ableton preset bass. It's funny, it actually says it's a strings sound. But yeah, very, very rich bassy kind of sound. George says, hey Taetro, I wasn't in the last session. Could you send a link to the download? I probably cannot do that right now, George, since we're streaming. But if you want to follow along, it doesn't necessarily have to be with this beat or this project. You can grab any project that you have that didn't make it out of this session view loop stage. And what we're doing today will really help you follow along. Even if you kind of didn't do all the things that I just went through, let's at least try. At least try to follow along, take your loops and arrange them, because that's what we're going to be getting into next. I should switch back to this. Boom. Emilio asks, did you put a limiter on the master channel? So last week we were actually having some issues with volume, so I have a mastering make it loud compressor on the master channel, which we're going to change up later. That was just there to help the stream get a lot more volume. But yeah, Mark, what is up in the Facebook chat? Nice to see you, Mark. Cool. So we're back in this view. Guys, let me know if I forget to switch the cameras, because I'm getting used to the new setup for sure. The last thing I want to show, so yeah, there's that mastering, make it loud on the top. The difference in sound is this. On. It is having kind of a limiting effect. You see that we're not red anymore here on the master. The other thing that we did, and this is just step one, I mean, this is really going to come in to play when we talk about more the mixing aspect, but we've got a sidechain compressor, which I've explained a dozen times, but I'll explain it one more time very quickly. A sidechain compressor, it takes a signal from, it could be from anything, but usually it's from a kick drum, and it takes that signal and compresses the sound, or makes it pump to the kick drum pattern. So if you can hear that pumping, and you can actually see it on this meter right here, that's because it's receiving signal from the kick drum and causing the sound to pump. Same thing with these pads here. I put this on pretty much every track, and it helps gel everything together really well. You see it coming through in a really extreme way there. And that's it. That is where we left it. Now we're going to start to get into like, how would I arrange this if I wanted to make this into an actual full track, especially if I want to get a vocalist or a rapper on it or something. if I wanted to sell the beat with the idea of a rapper having it, how would we do that? So I'm going to ungroup these. Simple fact of grouping these is just to like be organized, right? So if this is all my high stuff, I can keep it there. My drums is just the full drum kit and the hi-hats. Super simple. We want to kind of figure out where we want to start. And I actually might start with some of the high content. We're going to think a lot about song structure now from going forward. And what I'm going to do is grab these loops, selecting both of them, clicking on one, holding shift, clicking on the other one, and then I can drag them around, see? But I don't want to let go, not yet. Now I want to hit tab, and I want to drop them into arrangement view, which is how we're going to start arranging our track, of course. Make sure we drop in them into the correct lanes. Boom. And let's experiment a little bit. I think that starting with this high stuff is going to be the way to go. It does have a very intro feel. What is up, Basha? Welcome to the stream. Maxim, welcome. Jesse is here. Jesse just became a patron yesterday on patreon.com/Taetro, which is really awesome for people to support the channel, support the stuff. Somebody asked if I was using an iPad. No, I'm just using an iPad to monitor the chat. And one kind of rule of thumb that we're going to follow here is to create some change every 4 bars. So the bars are marked at the top, right? 1, 2, 3, 4, and so on. And really most music, a lot of music that we listen to, Western music, quote unquote, follows a 4-bar pattern. 4 or 8 or 16, some interval of that. And to keep the listener interested, we want to move at a steady pace. And especially since these musical ideas are just repeating, like they repeat after 4 bars, they're 4-bar loops. What's the point of having the listener listen to these again? Unless you were working with a rapper or somebody that wanted to add a longer intro and they had vocals that were changing over the top. That would be a difference. But for now, we're going to assume that we don't have that yet. And we're going to just try to make something that's pleasing to listen to. So I might actually bring the bass in here at bar 5. Let's listen to that. Well, let's listen to it from the beginning. I would say until the drums come in, it's still all really considered intro. And I would say by here, bar 9, we should definitely have some drums come in. And this right now, we're really just working with the musical ideas that we have, and we're going to evolve from that the deeper we go. But not only are we going to evolve with whatever musical ideas we're using, we're also going to evolve with how those sounds change over time. So whether we want to apply filters over time, things like that, and we'll kind of get into that starting now. So I might actually just completely drop out this high stuff. Let's see. What is up, DJ Kevin? No worries about being late. No worries. Welcome back. So to me, this sounds a little bit empty, but I do know that that's the basis of what my verse should sound like. Before we go on to the verse, I do have an idea for the intro to do some filtering. So I'm actually going to do this on the whole group for this high stuff. Literally just labeled it high stuff. So within high stuff, we have the bells and we have the pads, and they have their own stuff that can be automated and all that, but I want it to happen to the whole group. So I'm going to go ahead and go on this whole group here. Let's prop that open. I'm going to go to audio effects, and I'm going to go to auto filter. I'm going to drop that on the group, so we are affecting both of these sounds simultaneously. And I'm going to play with automating the filter. One thing I actually want to do that I should have done before we started this is I want to, I guess, gain stage a little bit, because we are going to make this sound louder in mixing and mastering later. And before we get too deep into arranging, I want to just select all the tracks, and I'm actually going to bring them all down. that was not all together. Let me go ahead and select all the tracks. Come on. Maybe I can't do it all at once now that they're in groups. We can, oh yes, we do it by group. There we go. So I'm gonna bring everything down, maybe even to that -12 mark. So everything's being brought down kind of at the same level. So for you guys, it's gonna be a little bit lower right now, but I'll try to add a little bit more level in there. It is a little lower right now, but trust me, because we're gonna add stuff on top later, that's gonna make it much louder. But that's the point in having everything down this low. But back to what we were doing. We're gonna filter in and out the high stuff for the intro. Let's do that. So right now the filter kind of defaults to being like this. I like to bring the resonance up a bit. And we gotta pick one of these knobs to automate. And of course the easy choice is the filter. So let's hear what that sounds like over time. So what I think I might do is fade it in and then fade it back out when the drums are about to come in. So I went ahead and turned on my automation lanes here. And now the last thing that I clicked on will be what is active to automate. So right now you can even see it says auto filter frequency. That's what we're doing, filter frequency on the auto filter. So what I would like it to do is peak here. I would like it to peak here, come up. Ooh, are we having some issues with the screen? Let me know if y'all can still see the screen, because on my video it just kind of went out. Let me see if that helps. Ooh, that was odd. Alright, we should be back to normal, guys. Let me know. I'm not sure if that glitch. My phone kind of went off, so that was odd. Maybe it was some interference or something. We're automating this, so I'm just making a triangle motion, right? Let's see. So now we have some motion, and I might not want this to fade out right away. I actually want it to be a fade out starting here. And you know what? Now that we have this filtered out sound, it might even be that I keep this high stuff in there, just filtered out. I'll find a place for it. And that also gives me the opportunity to bring it back up later, of course. But anything to add motion and create interest for the listener, because you gotta think, like, somebody can hit skip at any moment and go on to the next track that they want to listen to. So how are you gonna keep them interested? And it doesn't have to be with a new musical idea every time. It can also be with motion like this. Good. So like I said, we want to make changes every 4 bars. So here we've got that. We got 4 bars of high stuff filtering in, and then we added the bass, then we added the drums, and right here we've got 8 bars, assuming that this would be a verse, so space for a vocalist. What I might do is bring in that melody. So remember, that's the first thing we came up with, was this melody idea. And we're just using it now. I'm going to dip into chat right after this section. So if you guys got questions or things you want to chat about, let me know. And we will dive back in. I like that. Dropping out the bass. I don't know how much I like dropping out the drums. So I think what I might do is just keep the kick drum. So I'll take that original beat that we already made and delete the snares out of it. Thanks, Lost. Appreciate that. Oh, and actually now I think it's actually a good idea to bring the snare back in here. Because we're gonna really be, if we think of this as like a pre-chorus, like building back up to something. And you guys can probably imagine what's gonna happen next at bar 25 is we're gonna drop kind of everything in at the moment. But chat, how is it going? Yeah, DJ intro, Camilo, basically. Alright, I'm glad you can see this screen again, guys. Sorry, I think my connection was a little loose or something. Unsure. So, if you couldn't see how I started the automation process, there's this little box right here. So you notice when that's turned off, all those fancy automation points and lanes and lines go away. We turn that on, and boom, there it is. And this will show, depending on what lane you're in, like if I'm in high stuff on the group, whatever knob I click on will be what I can automate here. So watch that line change as I flip through the different parameters. See, it says what it is here, and we automated the filter frequency by double clicking and putting points in and, you know, drawing lines. No, Jesse, like, you are contributing, like, for sure. Does this video stay on? Yes, it does, Frank. You'll be able to watch it later. So even if you missed last week, you can go ahead and watch last week's video. And watching these together will actually be a very big help. So you'll have like a 2-hour like beat making masterclass essentially. Yeah, Lost. Thanks. I appreciate it. Make it repetitive until found some idea to write down. Yeah, basically. But you can take for granted that if you're giving it to a rapper or a singer or anybody that they're probably going to write in the traditional form. They're probably going to write verse, chorus, or intro, verse, pre-chorus, chorus, etc. So just making that basic arrangement from the get is going to probably help you a lot. Wave formation, what is up? How's it going, dude? Welcome. GSL GTC says, don't use Ableton, but the arrangement tips are amazing in itself. Thanks. Yeah, that's kind of what it's all about. These are concepts that transcend not just Ableton, but are for anybody who's making beats and stuff. But let's get back into it, because I know we said we were going to drop everything in at bar 25. Shortcut A, it might be Command A. I'm not sure what the command is for automation. Matt Hickson, but let me know if you figure it out. There's some commands that I use all the time and some things that are just easy enough for me to click. I do feel like I need something else there, but we're gonna get to it. Alright, so like I said, everything's going to come in there. And what we haven't had yet, so this is our quote-unquote hook section. And we'll get into kind of labeling these so it's more clear. And I'm going to make these 8 bars. You've noticed that I've kind of evolved into 8-bar patterns over time. And that's really being vocalist-minded. So, like I said, everything coming in. So I'm basically just duplicating all these loops. I will want to turn automation back on because I think abruptly here for this section, I want everything cranked, so I want the high frequencies in there. Whoops. I guess I should demonstrate that better. So in that automation lane, I can highlight, just like you would in like Microsoft Word or Google Docs. Oh, darn, I gotta switch the camera. I'm such a noob at this. So here we go. I'm duplicating everything, right? Want everything to come in, and that's what I've started doing at bar 25. There we go. So we basically just created a new section. And the automation lane for the filter on the high stuff, you notice that it's coming down, But for this drop, I want everything to be cranked. That's what I was talking about. So I want to highlight this section like in Microsoft Word or Google Docs, like highlighting a word basically, but we're highlighting a section of time. And we bring it up like that. So now we still get the filtering effect of it coming down for the transition, but as soon as it drops, it's back up. There's a layer that we're missing, and that's the hi-hats, and that's going to help add a ton of motion here. Boom. Duplicate, duplicate. And there we have a hook. Oh, we don't even have that original pad sound yet. That's going to make it sound even more full. Now that I think of it, this section of the verse could use that. So dropping out the snare and the bass definitely helps to create some kind of tension and build. So I can actually add locators here. So if I right click in this little lane, it gets really, there's a lot of space, like a lot of little spaces up here that you could do different things when you're right clicking and clicking. But in this little space here, we can add locators. And we can actually rename these locators. So if I click on that, and they actually become playheads too, which is useful. If I hit Command R, I can label them. This is helpful for song sections, especially if you're sharing projects. So boom, we add an intro here. And we haven't even gotten into adding like bells and whistles yet or anything. And this is really where verse 1 begins. So let's add a locator and let's call it verse 1. After we label these sections, I see lots of chat coming in, so we will absolutely be answering questions after we do this. So verse 1 ends up being 8 bars. I guess we are just working in 8-bar sections throughout. This section here where stuff drops out is the pre-chorus. And then this next section will be the chorus, or the hook. I use those two terms interchangeably. Oh, ruined the build-up. But there we go. So now you can see we have 4 different sections. And we will... This kind of is sounding a little bit bland to me because we haven't added some of the bells and whistles, I guess, is the best way to call it. I think I stole that from like deadmau5. I saw a deadmau5 stream once and he was referring to the stuff like risers and washes and that stuff as bells and whistles, and that's what we're going to add in later. But what I can do now, since I have verse, pre-chorus, chorus, and I can almost assume that that song section, that pattern is going to repeat, is select this whole section and hit duplicate time. So now we have about a 2-minute track. We just went from like a 120 track to about a 2-minute track with, you know, more of a real structure to it. So I would add in the locators again. We have a second verse. Verse 2. And then we would have pre-chorus. And you're really like creating a bed for somebody to write onto, you know? Giving somebody this template. It's a lot easier for a writer. Alright, so let's play that in the background as I answer some questions. Let's see. Kylo's lightsaber? I don't know. Is it? Are you using a second screen via sidecar with the iPad? No, just using the iPad to monitor chat. I've got the stream up so I can tell when I don't switch the camera or my HDMI randomly goes out. Do you take a lot of process on that pad sound or just using a preset? Let's see. I don't remember from last week. I'm gonna assume you mean this pad sound, which I believe is just a preset. Just a preset with a sidechain compressor on it. I might have rolled the filter off from the actual preset. But yeah, glass harmonica. What synth is this? It's an operator synth. So that's easy enough. Is there a difference between copying and pasting a region versus dragging and expanding it to the right for it to loop? Not really, but when we're working like this, like when things are in very even sections of like 4 and 8 bars, it's just easier for me to think about like duplicating that 4 to 8 bars rather than dragging it and elongating it. Also, when you duplicate sections, it will duplicate automation as well. As opposed to when you just drag it, it'll just leave the automation trail kind of where it left off. Automation shortcut is just A. I hear that, but I'm pressing A on my keyboard. Oh, you know why? Maybe? That's why. I had my, so the reason that that shortcut was not working was because I had this button turned on, which allows me to use my computer keyboard as a MIDI input. But if you turn that off, indeed, automation, A for automation. It makes sense. So yeah, not a lot of processing power on the pad. Doug Cooper, looking for what are common effects to automate. Filter, which is one we just did, and basically getting creative in automating almost anything, like reverb. Over time can have a very big effect, and let's start to actually play with some of these. So I'll play with some of that and answer that question as we go. Would you intentionally left space for the vocalist using EQ? Not really. It more comes down to making sure it's less of an EQ thing. I won't know that until I hear the vocalist, because you could have a female vocalist with a very high voice or a male vocalist with a super deep voice, and they'll sit in different places. So when thinking about EQ, I don't know that until I hear a vocalist. But it comes down to the musical ideas, right? Like, is there space for a vocalist to fit in this? What would probably get most in the way of a vocalist is actually the main melody. I assume that this melody is probably sitting in a middle range where a vocalist would be, especially a rapper. So I might not make room via EQ, although probably eventually. What I would probably make room for is like in the mix, like either take this melody out if it's getting in the way, or bring the volume down. And that's another answer for you, Doug. Another common thing to automate is just volume. If you want things to fade in and fade out, or if I wanted a specific section, I'm highlighting both these clips, holding shift and automating the volume. I can just bring that section's volume down, but I don't want to do that right now. Which, yeah, sweeps, volumes, panning. You're right, Doug. Since there's a little talk about EQ, we can talk about it for a little bit for sure. Because you see on this melody that I've got an EQ on it that was not included in the preset, and basically what it's doing is just removing all the low frequencies, and it's just dipping a little bit here. And that's because anything that's not a bass is gonna have low frequencies that are just clutter for your mix that you might not even be able to hear, and they just clutter it up. So for this pad, even rookie mistake, I didn't put an EQ on it. But you can see, look at that flutter down there. Yikes, that's rough, and I know we can't hear that. Like, there's no way we can hear that. Human ear. So what I would do is just Go to the first band on the EQ. And just sweep all that out so there's no chance of it getting through. And basically, nothing we can hear is, oh yeah, it's down here once the chord goes lower. And that's the safe zone. So that's the main EQ thing that I do on pretty much every track, no matter what. Let's move on and add some... Yeah, okay. Let's add a little bit of spice to this, I guess you could say. And for these different sections, like the pre-chorus seems a little lacking. So can we add to it using instruments we already have? Maybe. That sounds cool. So now that we're in this arrangement section, we're not locked into just using these musical ideas. We can add new musical ideas. And what time we got? We got 10:42, so this is probably as far as we'll take the arrangement, and then we'll get into the mixing stuff. But hopefully you guys are getting the idea to how to make these sections. So I might go ahead and add something in with this pad. So this first 4 bars is not bad because it's new, things have dropped out, but second 4 bars, let's do something. Something like that would be helpful. And I'm making these brackets, and now I just want to record in these 4 bars here, so I'm going to turn these on, which make it so it won't record before or after the section. Hit that record button, I'll get 4 bar count in, and then I can start playing. Let's see if we can mess with that even more. Let's try that. Let's try automating that reverb. So I'm clicking on the reverb here. That's what I'm automating. Let's do that over time. Again, only working in this section. So what I'm going to do is set a point at the beginning of the loop, a point at the end, and then I'm going to add a point somewhere in between that will go all the way till it ends. That's why this point is important, so I don't go over that line. Let's hear what that sounds like. Washed out, but maybe even building up with drive will help too. So let's continue to try that. Again, point at the beginning, point at the end, point somewhere towards the end. Let's build up to that point. Else that's going to help us build tension is just using noise and effects. This is the most important thing. This is what I'm talking about with bells and whistles. I'm just going to go into my pre-saved library of FX sounds that I use all the time. You can obviously search through your samples and find some white noise. I'm going to pick some quickly, and I'm going to add these in as new tracks, and what I got to make sure is that they don't get over-processed by my basic audio processing rack. I can bring down the volume to match everything else. What I might do is turn this back on, turn the compressor off, but keep the reverb on and have it huge. Might change the warp mode. If I wanted to use the same exact noise as a build-up, all I have to do is hold Options, drag it this way so that it's kind of right next to it. Now I have a copy of it, and I can hit reverse. Maybe to give it a different kind of sound, we can transpose. cool trick to do with risers, and like this is like bells and whistles. We're adding these to all the different sections, especially if we're building up to a pre-chorus, building up to a chorus, transitioning back to a verse. Like different versions of this can happen at every section change. But let's try something fun with autopan. Autopan is kind of what it sounds like. It automates the pan between your ears at a certain rate. And this is another thing that we can automate. So obviously we have the amount, which is something that will automate over time. And we're going to do this just to that build-up noise. So I'll grab that section, and you know, if I highlight it and do this, I get the points built in for me. Then I can do this. Again, that's automating the amount. Let's see what that sounds like. That's really slow. What I actually want to do is make the rate go faster over time. So I'm going to take this and build it up faster. But not too fast. So let's hear what that sounded like. Notice that that the noise becomes normal after here, because this amount is 0. It was automated only for this 2 bars. Now that is something, if I was working smarter, not harder, I would have done before I duplicated the sections. And it would have just gone with here, but now I can just copy it and put it here anyway. So that could happen every time the chorus happens. We could mess with that rate. One more thing we could do is just like with the hi-hats, we could mess with the transpose. Let's just draw some really weird stuff in here and see what effect we can get. It's gonna sound so stupid. So, I actually want the pitch overall to go down. Let's make a better shape. Bring this up. Boom, there we go. Here you go. I can see that without my face in the way. One more like this. And this might be a little overkill, but I'm just kind of trying to demonstrate. It's interesting enough. For my taste, I would add different bells and whistles for each different section. Don't sleep on like this is already a reverse build, right? But it can also very easily become a in the other direction, falling. Especially where this verse starts. And here's one more thing with this bells and whistles effect that I'll show you. And then we're going to take the last 10 minutes to throw on a mastering chain. You guys can hear the difference in the sound, and I'll kind of explain it a little bit. So like I said, I did say that we could reverse it, but I actually want to keep it as a build to the verse. And one thing that's very effective that's different from this is building. So we're going to build to that verse here. That has a reverb tail because there's reverb on the track, but something that and that can work. That actually sounded pretty good. I might keep that, but just to demonstrate, what we can actually do is completely cut this track here, and I could do this. I could do it with this volume here, but I don't like to automate this volume here because that's more of like my mix. So that's why I have a utility on each track where I can do the gain. So what I might do is just all the way here is automate this gain to be 0. Now hear the difference. It's gonna be a quick cutoff. Maybe I like that. Maybe I like the reverb tail better. And maybe to add a little more life to this section, let's automate the filter on the melody. And let's bring it in over time. Let me just run that back because that was a really fast thing that I did there. I highlighted the section, which gives me access to grabbing just this line here, right? And then I brought it down to where I want the slope starting point to be. And then, since I have 4 points, right? Starting points, end points, I just take this point out and it gives me a perfect incline. There's easier ways to do it with Live 10, but I'm not that fluent. It's an old habit from old versions of Live. And this will create a motion that makes this section more dynamic. And what I might do on this pad is actually automate the filter to come down over time. Let's do that. Again, remembering that though there would be a vocalist there or something. And it doesn't have to be just noise with the bells and whistles. Here I have a sample called the drop, which is a really heavy bass drum hit, I guess you could say. Hopefully you can hear that, but it's a really low hit that emphasizes the drop of the chorus. And that's definitely something I would use to drop on a chorus, I guess. Actually using the send, so I have a return track with reverb. If I automate that send to actually happen on every snare, it gives me a different feel than the original verse. All these things, oops, I'm automating the wrong thing. All these, I can do it on the group. To say all these things are to keep your listener interested, to make something, to take the simplest musical ideas like this copy and pasted drum loop and change it over time so that it somehow feels new. And I might do it only for every other. Let's see if this works. Boom, copy and pasted the automation. Sirens are on my end, not yours. I actually really like the reverb on those snare hits. So that's just an example of bells and whistles. I'm not saying this track is anywhere close to finished, but it's as close as we can get in an hour, right? What we have: clear sections, a clear intro, verse, pre-chorus, and chorus. Verse, pre-chorus, chorus. We duplicated that. What I would go on to do after this chorus is maybe add some new section for 8 bars. Right? We don't have time to do that today, but maybe next week's stream will be all about adding a B section or adding a bridge. So let's actually just add a locator here to remind myself. Bridge, right? And that's what that section would be. But then from there, I would actually be able to copy this time and maybe do a double chorus at the end. And there we have a almost 3-minute long track, which is kind of, what we should be aiming for, especially in a contemporary, pop rap track. We could go longer, but this bridge for 8 bars and then jumping into another chorus, suddenly we have a thing that was just a bunch of loops. It's now arranged into a very neat song structure, and this is very, very basic song structure. You can obviously diverge from this. I implore you to diverge from this, but for learners at a very basic level, there's nothing wrong with following templates like these, because that's going to help you learn. It's the old adage of like, learn the rules so you can break the rules. Emilio says I could have sampled the sirens and put them in the song. Yeah, true. We have a little bit of time left, so let's bring this whole thing to the next level, the whole sound to the next level. Imagine that we added a bridge and that this track was almost ready. What I would do is go into my user library and grab this thing I call Beat Sketches Master. I turned off the original mastering, make it loud. I'm getting rid of that. And I would just grab my pre-made mastering chain, drop it in there, and now the track would sound like this. Sounds a lot more alive as opposed to this. This sounds like a dead Ableton project. This sounds like... Oh, this sounds a lot more full. Just a lot more polished, right? And that is a very basic, very, very basic mastering chain. I'm not a mix or mastering engineer by any means, but let me just go through what my thinking is with this chain here. So the first thing I have is an EQ, and I'm actually just gonna turn things off as we go. So the first thing I have is a little EQ. Let's play the verse, we'll loop it with a kind of a U shape. Do we see that? Which means I'm pumping up a little bit of the lows and I'm slightly bringing up the highs. And like I said, this is a rack that I throw on every track that I tailor to each track. So it's not like I just throw it on and it's done. I might say, oh, this track needs a little more highs. Or I might say, oh, I want to boost that kick even more. That's a force. Or I need to cut the mids more. But this is a basic shape, like a V shape is generally what it's referred to. It looks more like a U right now. Very basic thing right there. And what we talked about with like EQing for a vocalist before, leaving that middle, dipping it in the instrumental actually does help leave room for a vocalist. The next thing I have is this tape emulation plugin, Waves J37. So let's hear the difference. It's not on, and now it's on. Off. On. What you hear is a little bit more warmth and a little bit more saturation, which comes from the tape emulation. I just think it gives it a little more of an analog sound, which I like. Next, we've got this gentle limiter. Obviously, that's adding a ton of volume. But notice, it's adding a ton of volume without this master peaking. That's where it came in really, really handy to bring all that gain down to the beginning. So I saw that comment, Breath of the Muse, oh god, I used an OTT with a low wet amount. You shouldn't feel, oh, and he says, mastering session and felt guilty that I liked it so much. People jump on like people's process or whatever, and if you go look at some like super famous producers and EDM people, like you'll see tracks with like OTTs stacked up. So don't feel guilty about your process. Find what works for you. This OTT is adding a little accentuation to certain frequencies. So let's A/B test it, and hopefully you can hear it. On. Hopefully you can hear the effect that has on the lows and the highs. Obviously I'm listening through it through headphones, not on my speakers, so this isn't like the most ideal mastering process, but just to turn that off again, that's what the chain does. The chain brings it to life. And you notice, yeah, like that OTT is down at 19%. I'm gonna bring it up, and this is, like, you can even tell it's off right now. This is gonna make it sound so bad. Like, that's crazy. And I could, like I said, tailor this to my liking. Do I want more saturation? Seems unnecessary, but you could dial it in. But having a mastering chain that you've kind of worked with, and as you create beats, your beats, here's why this process matters. When you refine your process and you say, okay, I'm going to have a melody, some middle pads, some high content, heavy drums, some bells and whistles, whether or not you copy that exact process or you find a process for yourself, you make a mastering chain that then works for you in your process and just about gets you there every time. So you can just automate your process and make more music sound better faster. And that's what works for me. So that's called Beat Sketches Master, because I have a couple of releases called Beat Sketches Volume 1 and Beat Sketches Volume 2. And what I was finding in making those beats is my process was getting more and more refined, where I was making the same changes to every track. So I could create a template that fit there. Does this master chain fit on everything and work and help everything? No, it doesn't. But my general beat making process, it does. It helps a lot, and it automates my process. So I only, instead of building up a chain every single time and making these like really minute decisions of like, oh, the OTT 19%, 20%, whatever, and dropping them in. Do I need the tape to warm it up? I just say, no, it's automated. Drop the chain on, see if that's how it makes it, if it makes it sound good. And if it does, we're good. We attenuate it a little bit, and then we move on. Why is the low end so heavy, distorted? Yeah, that's again, that's how I like my sound. I like the bass to be like rocking and sound pretty heavy. I guess that's it. That kick drum is a very gritty kick drum, which again, we used a lot of Ableton preset stuff. This is an Ableton pre-made drum kit here. So it's called the Candler kit. See if I can super heavy. Yeah. Ableton Sound Goodizer, the OTT. Yeah, I guess so. OTT is a multi-band compressor. So we talked about compressors before, but OTT and multi-band compressors in general, they focus on specific frequencies, and the OTT has sections for high, mid, and low. So it's just a deeper way of attenuating a compressor. What does that square box in the J37 preview? So when you use plugins that are not like Ableton, like these are obviously Ableton plugins because they've got their own Ableton interface, right? When you use outside plugins, this is essentially an XY for whatever parameter can be automated. So if I click on rate, like you see the automation lane changes, but this is like how you would change it. Like you can select the different things, well, that would be on the X and Y. It's just because it's not an Ableton stock plugin, so it doesn't have a stock Ableton interface. That's kind of The generic third-party plugin thing is this little XY with being able to add different values to that XY. Cool masks. Thanks. I like my masks. I like to collect masks. All right, I'm going to dig through chat while we wind down here and see if you guys had any questions that I missed. DJ Kevin Anthony said, duplicate the bass line with a Hammond B3 organ, please. Maybe next week, for sure. That's a good idea. Do I master within the same project or do I export the stems? This is the process right here. This is what I do. I throw the master on the master, and that's it. I'm sure committing everything to audio and stems is the way to go, but it's just not my current workflow. I don't have a need to do that yet. The project won't be available, but I encourage you to take these concepts and apply them to your projects. You don't need my project to go through with it. If you watch a combination of last week's stream and this week's stream, you will be able to guide yourself through a similar beat making process and get a similar result. Just follow along and you'll be good. Jeez, DJ Kevin, spamming it in the chat. Tape is like the vintage warmer, Maria. Yeah, kind of. It warms it up. Any kind of saturation will warm stuff up, you know? Jesse, I hope I answered your question on the J37 for sure. Eminus Music says, I make chill step and I even heavily use OTT. Yeah, OTT is a powerful tool. Definitely look up some tutorials on it. Yeah, for sure. Is using presets cheating? No. I just made this whole beat with presets. Literally nothing is cheating. The only thing that's cheating is taking somebody else's track and saying it's yours. Here's the thing about presets and quote-unquote cheating, right? And there's this like very clever story that goes with it. It's like, well, I used to make presets, but then somebody told me that was cheating. So I stopped using presets and I started making my own presets. But then somebody told me that that was cheating, so I went and sampled my own sounds. I went and recorded other synths. And somebody told me sampling was cheating. So now I own a goat farm where I raise goats and skin them to make my own drums because I need to do everything from the ground up. I need to make my own drums with my own skinned goats for it to not be cheating. Like, at what level does it become not cheating, you know? And the moral of that story is, well, I don't make much music anymore because I'm busy running a goat farm. Like, that's the like level of inception that you go down when you go down that cheating, quote unquote, mindset. When really it doesn't matter. And whether you think it's cheating or not, there are people making Billboard Hot 100 tracks, like multi-platinum producers, that are not worrying about what is or what is not cheating. They're just doing. So that's really like an amateur mindset if you're thinking about a process being cheating. Like, unless you are a multi-platinum Grammy award-winning artist, I don't want to hear your opinion on what's cheating and what's not. Bottom line. If you're sitting in a bedroom somewhere saying, oh, using that preset is cheating or using that loop is cheating, why does that opinion matter? Why does it matter to you specifically? You can do whatever you want. Your creative process is yours. That's my opinion. Mac Joseph says, choose your method and try new things. We're coming to the end of the stream here, though, so sorry to end on a little bit of a rant, but hopefully you guys were able to take away some arrangement tips from this. Next week, if we're back, thinking about doing stuff on B sections. How to add a B section, how to create contrast. So if you guys don't know, my name is Taetro. If you're just meeting me here in this stream, I have my own YouTube channel, youtube.com/Taetro. I'm also on Instagram at Taetro, Twitter at Nick Taetro. If you want to hit me up and say, hey, I found you from ADSR, it was a really cool stream, it would be great to know that. If you want to subscribe to my channel as well, I do live streams similar to this, different controller stuff. I've got lots of videos, performances, more tutorials like this. This camera is a GH5, I should say. My back camera is a G85. But yeah. Really appreciate you guys tuning in. I got a weekly beat with ADSR that comes out every week, usually around the weekend, Friday or Saturday. So if you see that weekly beat on either ADSR's YouTube or Instagram, that's me. That's my hands. Hopefully y'all enjoyed the stream. That's going to be it for me today. Like I said, check out my channel, youtube.com/Taetro, Taetro. Hit me up. Let me know you came from ADSR. Would love to know. Appreciate y'all. This has been Taetro. Have a good one.